Mercy Me is coming to Pittsburgh. The Together Again tour with Mercy Me, Crowder, and special guest Andrew Ripp. Thursday, October 5th. Bring your family and friends to the PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh for Mercy Me, Crowder, and Andrew Ripp live in concert. 3 multiple award-winning artists on one stage for one night. Let your spirit soar, your heart sing, and your faith ignite. Mark your calendars for Thursday, October 5th. Get your tickets now at mercyme.org.
In 2003, you lost your arm in a shark attack. And so after that, I think most people would think, well, surfing's over.
I looked down, I realized my arm's gone and it's not coming back. Oh my gosh, life is different. I don't know what my future holds.
Hey y'all, and welcome to the Christy Wright Show. I'm so excited because we have an awesome show for you today. Today, we are talking about the secret to success. And I guarantee you, it's not what you think. And then I get to sit down and have an awesome conversation with the amazing Bethany Hamilton. You've probably heard of her. She is a professional surfer. She has an incredible story. She's an inspirational speaker, author, mom, and she is going to inspire you right where you are. But first, let's talk about the secret to success. Now, I love helping people in business and life. I love helping you reach your goals, push the limits, try new things. And so often I think we're always looking for a formula. What do successful people have? What formula do they follow? How can I do this? How can I have this? And what's amazing is so often we look to the wrong things. We think, oh, well, it's the amount of money they have. They have all the resources, or maybe it's the relationships they have. They have all the right connections. They were born into the right family. Or maybe we think, it's talent. They were just born this way. They have these special genes, these special gifts. They are uniquely wired to be able to do the things they do and reach the level of success that they have reached. And while some of that may be true, sure, those factors are always at play. But I will tell you, the number one thing that is an indicator of success are not any of those qualities. It's none of those things that we're looking at. It comes down to one word. Are you ready for it? Perseverance. Perseverance, pushing through, being willing to try again and again and again and again. It's persistence. It's being hard-headed. It's not giving up. And I know you've heard that. And I know you're going, yeah, I get it. But do you? Because what's interesting is we can look at other people fail, fall down, land on their face, get up, dust themselves off, and we're like, good for them. But when we fail, when we fall, it hurts. It hurts. It cuts deep. It wounds our ego. It wounds our hope in the future. And that voice in our head starts to get really, really loud. Never again. I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to risk that again. I'm not going to put myself out there like that again. Or see, that's proof I should have never done that. See, that was dangerous. See, I wasn't cut out for that. See, I told you. We look at that failure. We look at that mistake, and we use that as proof of why we never should have done the thing to begin with. Now, I have a really cliche example for you guys. So when I was about 8 or 9 years old, growing up, I had always loved horses, ridden horses. I had horses at my dad's house whenever I would go see him on the weekends. And so I've always loved horses, been fascinated by them and loved riding. Well, one time I was at my aunt's house. This is my mom's sister, and I was over at her house. She had horses also, and my mom and her sister were talking. So you know how women get, they're talking, they're just engrossed in each other's stories, and they're not really paying attention to the kids. Me and my cousin Daniel. Well, Daniel's older than me. He's about 11 at this time, and he has this idea. He says, hey, Christy, you want to go ride the horse? And I was like, yeah. I'm never going to pass up an opportunity to get to ride. Now, did we ask permission? No, not exactly. But I trusted Daniel. He's older. This is his house. It's his farm. It's his horse. He surely knows what's going on. So he takes me into the barn where the horse is in his stall. And he doesn't put a saddle on the horse because I don't think he knows how and probably can't lift it with his 11-year-old self. But he's like, it's fine. It's no big deal. The horse didn't have a bit or bridle or reins or anything like that. He just takes a lead rope, which is literally a rope, y'all. If you're not familiar with horses and tack and all the equipment, it's a clip on a rope. That's it. Well, he clips one side of the rope to the horse's harness, which goes over the horse's snout, does not go in his mouth, does not control the horse in any way, is what I'm trying to tell you. clips one side, takes the other end of the rope over the horse's neck, ties it. Yeah, an 11-year-old knot in the other side of the harness, and just opens the gate and says, have fun. I'm like, are you sure this is okay? He's like, yeah. It's like, okay. I'm holding on to this lead rope that is attached to nothing. Well, the horse gets into the round pen, which is this small little closed off area, and the horse sees an open gate. He knows he's not controlled. He knows he doesn't have a saddle, and he knows he doesn't have a bit and bridle in his mouth. And he knows his rider is an 8-year-old girl that doesn't know what she's doing. And he takes off out the gate through the field. I'm screaming, holding on. Well, of course, the knot comes loose. The lead rope, I've got one end of the lead rope, zero control, nothing to put my feet in stirrups or anything like that. My mom and my aunt look up, and they just see this 8-year-old little girl flying across the field, holding on to one end of a rope. Well, of course, that horse bucks me right off. I go flying off the back of the horse, hit my head on a rock, and I was really hurt. Now, I was okay, but it hurt. It scared me. It took me a while to get over, and I just remember saying, I'm never riding a horse again. I'm never riding a horse again. That was scary. That was awful. That was traumatic. I got hurt. I'm never riding again. My mom was like, you're right, you're not. But it was when I went to my dad's house that weekend that he spoke such wisdom over me. He said, the very first thing we're going to do is get back on that horse. Now, I know you've heard that example before, get back on the horse. But I literally had to get back on the horse. My dad saddled our horse up. I got on and I rode around at my dad's house. And I understood that failure was an incident. That failure was a situation. That was not indicative of an entire life or an entire lesson about horses. Thankfully, my dad got me back on the horse. And I have spent my entire life loving horses, working at farms and ranches. I had my own farm and horses and horse sporting business, which many of you have heard me talk about. But none of that would have been possible had I not gotten back on the horse. Now, that was one example when I was a young child, but I've had examples even adulthood that have planted that same seed, that voice got loud in the same way to say never again. Many of you have heard me talk about the speaking event that scarred me. Early in my speaking career, I had a speaking event where I absolutely bombed, like wanted to disappear behind the podium. I cried the whole drive back to Nashville and told myself, never again. I'll never speak again. I'll never walk on a stage. I'll never put myself out there like that to be embarrassed or humiliated again, never again. But I did. And I'm so glad that I did. Because the number one reason I've been able to do anything that I do is because I was willing to try again. Perseverance. Just simply getting back up, dusting yourself off, and being willing to show up again. To hold your head high even when you're embarrassed. To put your shoulders back even when you're ashamed. And to show up again. Now, I don't know what that is for you. I don't know if it's a business dream. I don't know if it's a relationship that you feel like you've burned that bridge and you need to reach out to that person. I don't know if it's a goal that you have buried, a dream in your heart that you have put on the back burner. I don't know what it is for you. But I know that if you are willing to persevere, it will pay off. I love the quote by William Feather where he says, success is largely a matter of hanging on after others have let go. And hanging on is a choice. It's not a bank account number. It's not a certain relationship that you have. It's not a certain gene that you're born with. It's a choice you make to show up and get up again and again and again, even when it hurts, even when you're embarrassed, even when you're ashamed, even when no one believes in you, even when you don't even have any hope. You choose to get up and take the next step anyway. You're just simply not willing to give up. You're not willing to take no for an answer. You're going to try again. You know, a book that I love is by Angela Duckworth, and it's called Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance. And she has some really interesting data in here. One of the things that she talks about is a study in 1940 at Harvard University where these researchers wanted to understand what is the effect of grit? What's the effect of perseverance, of just this passion, this persistence, this attitude of like, I'm not gonna give up no matter what. And so what they did is they put them through something called a treadmill test. And the whole purpose of this test was to be exhausting. They took these young men at Harvard University in their 20s, and they put them on a treadmill at a very steep incline and a very high speed, and they wanted to see how long they could stay on the treadmill. Now, of course, physical ability, physical fitness was a piece of the equation, but it wasn't the entire equation. And they actually tracked these men throughout their life, keeping in touch with them every 2 years over the course of decades. And what was fascinating is those men that stayed on the treadmill the longest, those that had the most grit, the most perseverance, the most passion, the most persistence, are those that had the most success in adulthood in relation to finances, their marriage, their family, their career, and overall life satisfaction and happiness, measured on a treadmill when they were 20. Isn't that amazing? There's also a really great quote in here by Will Smith, who I absolutely love. Here's what he says. He was asked to explain how he has just ascended into this, entertainment elite, like at the top of his game. And here's what he said. The only thing that I see that is distinctly different about me is this. I'm not afraid to die on a treadmill. Now, he doesn't mean this literally in relation to the treadmill study, but he's saying just in general, he's not afraid to work hard. He said, I'm not afraid to die on a treadmill. I will not be outworked, period. You might have more talent than me. You might be smarter than me. You might be sexier than me. You might be all of those things. You got it on me in 9 categories. But if we get on the treadmill together, there's 2 things. You're getting off first, or I'm going to die. It's really that simple. Talk about perseverance. It's amazing how when we understand that this quality, which is available to all of us, this choice that is available to all of us, is the number one factor in our ability to be successful. I love how Winston Churchill said, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. Another way to say it is in the book of James, and I love this scripture. I've used it many times. I'm sure you've heard it before. This is James 1:2-4. It says, consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Not lacking anything. So I don't know where you are today. I don't know what you're struggling with. I don't know what things of your life feel intimidating, what wounds have been holding you back, what limitations or fears you feel like are a really good reason why you shouldn't do that next thing or go for that next goal or try that next thing. But I want you to know this one choice, and it is a choice, not a trait. It is a choice, not a gene. This one choice that you can make truly can change everything. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. All right, y'all, I'm so excited because I get to sit down with the amazing Bethany Hamilton. Bethany, thanks so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
So your story is incredible and what you have accomplished. You're an inspirational speaker. You have a new course out called Unstoppable. You have multiple books. You have a movie about your story. I mean, you have had like an incredible life in your young years. But I want to go back to kind of some of those early days and talk about, that love of surfing, because I'm sure most people have heard your story, but I want to hear it from you. Like talk a little bit about growing up and your first exposure to surfing and how this whole thing got started for you.
Oh gosh, yeah. I had a beautiful childhood. My parents were amazing, and I grew up at the beach. The beach and ocean were my playground. Mm-hmm. So I kind of adopted a love for surfing and the ocean really young. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure they had me on a board before I could walk, which is what I'm doing today with my kids. Yeah. So, and then on top of that, my parents encouraged me in the Christian faith, and that kind of set me up for, I guess, the life that I was to face. Yeah. And growing up, I just had I would say I was pretty confident as a young girl, and going out in the ocean, being challenged constantly by the ocean, and also just knowing that as much as I loved surfing and wanted to be my best in that space, I also wanted to have my life be more than just about that, and wanted God to be about whatever He had planned for my life. So I think once things got, the unplanned happened, I I was in a good headspace to kind of face that trial in my life.
So you said something a minute ago, just now that I want to go back to. You said, I was pretty confident I faced challenges. And it was interesting, you said challenge and confidence right there together. And I think that's so interesting because I think people think of confidence as like, this is this personality style, or it's a gene that certain people have. And I've always found that like when I challenge myself and I overcome those, whatever they may be, that's what builds my confidence. So even before the tragedy, the accident happened, in those early days, what are some times when maybe you fell on the surfboard or like you crashed or like something that was like a challenge where you're like, that developed that confidence at a young age? Talk to me about that.
Oh my gosh, the ocean is like constant.
It'll beat you right left, right?
Gosh,
like knock you down.
It is totally challenging you all the time. And like, I think starting in that space so young, it's like everyone sees it as just this beautiful, like you're spending time in the ocean, you're riding waves, it's magical, and it is, but it's also like incredibly challenging. Like waves just want to like send you back to the beach. Like sometimes you'll duck dive, so it's like where you push your board underneath waves, and you'll duck dive like 50 times back to back. So imagine just doing like 50 burpees over and over again. You're just like,
I don't want to imagine that.
I can't do this anymore. So being so young and like kind of being faced with that like kind of fight physical challenge, which transfers into the mental, I think, kind of built up that resilience in me, I would say. And sometimes, you'd have like really scary wipeouts where you're underwater for longer than you want to be, but you're okay. You come up, you're fine. Sometimes you get boo-boos, like hit the reef or hit your surfboard, but it's all kind of things you just kind of have to bounce and keep pushing on, keep paddling.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love how you said that it develops that resilience of like, it's just normal. It's not because you had this insulated, perfect childhood that you were able to face challenges. It was like you were in the challenges you faced. And if anybody's ever seen waves in Hawaii, like they're like, I remember even we were talking, before we started recording, my husband and I went on vacation there and we'd sit on the North Shore and just watch the surfers. And these waves are like taller than buildings and they're massive that, it's just hard to imagine the force that is. And just even being little, out there paddling.
It can be so terrifying. And so I think like all of the while, like you're building your confidence, but then you're consistently being humbled too. And it's like the ocean's always reminding you that like I'm stronger. God created it to be like all like extremely powerful. So it's like always kind of putting you back in your like humble little place. And then, but it's also like so luring in that you want to like get better, do better, like charge a bigger wave, or at least that's how I approached it.
It's almost like addictive of like, what's the next thing you can do? It keeps that healthy respect, for it. Okay, so you had this love of surfing when you were little, and you got out there and you were so familiar, and you're like, okay, like you get knocked down on a reef, like no big deal, I'm going to bounce back up and I'm going to do this again. In 2003, you lost your arm in a shark attack. And so after that, I think most people would think, well, surfing's over for me. And your story is the exact opposite, Bethany. Like, it's amazing how not only were you back on the surfboard, and I want you to talk to me about that, about like what led you to get on the surfboard, but how God has used you in such powerful ways through this platform that may not look like this had that not happened. So after this happened, you're 13 years old, is that right? What got you back on the board? Like, talk to us about that decision, because that was amazing.
Yeah, I remember being in the hospital and I like looked down, I realized my arm's gone and it's not coming back. And it like all sank in, like in that moment of like, oh my gosh, life is different. Like, I don't know what my future holds. Like, maybe there was a bit of a confidence questioning going on. My like everything felt upside down. Like my future felt uncertain. And but all the meanwhile, I also had a sense of peace that like God was in control. And I also had a deep sense of like gratitude that I was even alive and breathing. And I knew that I could have died. And so kind of starting those days with like, okay, I'm thankful to be alive and I'm going to trust in you, God, because you tell us, John 16:33, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Before that it says he'll also give us peace. But so I had this peace that I believe only God could have given me. And that like propelled me forward for sure. But I also wasn't like, yes, I'm going to go surfing.
Right.
Like, what am I even going to be able to do, you know? But then I had a conversation with a friend by the name of Mike Coots, and he had lost his leg to a shark maybe like 6 years before myself. And he learned how to surf with one leg.
Wow.
So he came into the hospital, like, and just sharing, hey, like, I think you can surf with one arm. Like, I was paddling around this morning. He, like, went around and, like, just to see how it felt.
That's amazing.
And he's like, I think you can do it. So that, like, all it took was really just, like, that spark of inspiration.
Someone believing in you.
Meanwhile, my mom was like, no you're
thanks.
not going to surf. Like, it's just not, we're going to move to the mountains or something.
Yeah. Take up a new sport.
You could be a photographer, like your brother. Like, so, like, naturally, I think it's human to, like, sometimes not think outside of the box of, like, what we think is possible.
Right.
But sometimes it just takes, like, that moment of, like, a spark or a light bulb to, like, be like, wait, maybe I can. Like,
yeah.
And then once I did it, it was, like, no turning back. And
so the first time you were on the board, were you scared? Like that you couldn't get up? Or
I
that
was
you didn't
more scared that I wouldn't be able to do it. Like, it was like sharks were kind of irrelevant because I was surfing in really shallow, mellow. I wasn't, like, going into the
I mean, like, the fear
blue.
that you wouldn't be able to get up because you're like, I've put myself out here. I'm in my bathing suit. I'm in the water. I'm on the board. I'm going to try. And I know this sounds silly, Bethany, but the reason I'm asking about that is because I think so many people get stuck there. They get stuck in their fear and they don't ever try to pop up. They don't ever paddle again. They don't ever, whatever their thing is. And so that's why, like even hearing from you, someone that's done it, but it's not that you weren't scared. You didn't just run out there like, oh, I'm definitely going to do it. You didn't know. You hadn't tried.
And I think so often, like, so many of us don't necessarily have, like, a passion place or a thing that we're, like, super pumped on.
Right.
And I think to find that, it takes, like, willingness to try. And I had that willingness to try, like, just a little hint of me that was brave enough to, like, get out there and try. And then I remember my first 2 waves, I, like, fumbled off the board. And then my dad's like, here, let me help you. And I was like, Miss, like, independent.
I got this. Yeah.
But he gave me a tip, like, just I had to adapt and do things differently with one arm. So I put my hand in the center of the board so that I was more balanced. And then I popped up on my 3rd wave and, like, rode it all the way to the beach and just felt like one of the best rides of my life.
Were you on top of the world? Just
tears of joy. Like, okay, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And then from there, it was just, like, kind of starting a life of adapting to my different circumstance. And I always think how, what if my mind wasn't willing to try? Or what if I was angry instead of grateful? Or, like, I think our mind has such a key role in having a healthy mindset to overcome different circumstances. So I would just challenge people listening today that, like, hey, you can flip how you view your environment and approach life with gratitude and adapting and being willing to try. And I had this conversation with Nick Vujicic, who is born with no limbs, and I admire him so much because of the way he's lived his life. But when he was 6 years old, he wanted this book on top of a bookshelf. And so imagine a little 6-year-old, like, no limbs. He just has a little foot nubby. And he's like, Mom, can you get me that book? And his mom says, no. And he's like, you're so mean, Mom. She's like, you figure it out. And lo and behold, like, however long later, he gets the book. I don't know how, but that set him up for, like, overcoming all the so-called, like, handicap mindset he could have lived his life with. And instead, he became a man of resiliency. And with him, I talk about overcoming obstacles in my unstoppable course. And he's, like, the epitome of, like, being willing to try.
Right.
Get that book at 6 years old. And then imagine the rest of his life. I'm sure there's endless challenge this guy had to face and continues to face. But he didn't let his mind hold him back.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot on this show. We talk about protecting your mind and the power of your thoughts and how that directs your behaviors, your actions, your outcome, whether you believe you can or you can't, and how that affects you. It's so interesting how you talk about that, because one of the things that I think is so powerful, and I've just been kind of digging into this, but this idea of surprising yourself Like doing something hard that you're not sure if you can do it, and then you do it. It might be the 4th or 5th try or whatever the thing is.
Or the 100th.
Or the 100th, or years later. But when you surprise yourself and you think, I didn't know I could do that, your brain's next logical thought is, what else can I do that I might not be aware of? And your confidence grows. And it's all from, just like you said a minute ago, challenging yourself, pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. It would be so easy for you to be like, well, surfing's over. We're moving to the mountains. Like, this happened and I can't surf, and you need balance to surf. Like, there's a very practical element to the sport that you did. And you chose not to take that route. You chose not to think those thoughts and said, how can I do it? And as you popped up and surprised yourself, you're like, okay, game on. What else can I do? I can compete. I can, and all these doors open and all this, all the impact that you've made because you're willing to get back on the board. And it's just amazing how that one choice has affected your entire life.
Truly. And I think of everyone views the loss of my arm in that day as like the most horrifying event ever. And yes, it was horrible, but so much good and beauty and joy and like bringing of hope has come from that day that like I can only imagine that like God could create such a beautiful picture in life. And I had the support I needed, but I also made choices that kind of led me along the way to surprise myself.
That's right. Yeah. We say all the time, we're going to work like it all depends on us and pray like it all depends on God, because you're going to need both. You know what I mean? It's not we're just going to sit around and pray and hope God just, changes everything. You're also not going to, not consider that God can do things.
I love that quote. That's cute.
Not consider that God can provide and God can open doors and God can give you strength to do things that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Okay, you teach women, you teach people, men and women, how to be this idea of unstoppable. You have a new course, which I want to talk about. But when you break this down, like in a tactical, practical, like someone that's sitting at home going like, I want to be like you. I want to be resilient. I want to be persistent. I just don't feel that. I don't think that's my personality style. I'm not wired that way. They got excuses for days. How do you unpack this in a way that that helps them see what they need to do? Like, what would you say to someone that's like, I want to be unstoppable and persevere? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's funny because the word unstoppable, where it stemmed from, it started with we named my documentary that, but at the same time we were working on this project of building this online program. And I really, I grew to love that term unstoppable. And it's not about being perfect or being right. I'm going to muscle my way through life to the best I can. Yeah. But it's just being your most beautiful, real self and, having a healthy mindset, being able to overcome obstacles, being able to live with healthy choices on a day-to-day level, being able to bless the people around you. One of my favorite topics of the course, we start the course with it, is being present. Mm-hmm. So I think today in 2020, we live in one of the most wild times as far as there's so much distractions at us as adults, but at our youth. And it's stealing from our ability to just be still and know that God is God. Right. And that have some time to have self-reflection or to dream about the life you want to live or to live the life you want to live because there's so much pulling at you and it's such a go, 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 do. But we really need to stop, slow down, rest. I have this conversation with Kate Merrick, who I admire so much. And she had a young daughter diagnosed with cancer at I think she was 6 years old. So they began this battle of fighting for her life. And she was sitting in the hospital with her daughter. And she was scrolling on her phone, looking at all her friends' perfect lives. Mm-hmm. And she found herself becoming bitter and angry and just frustrated for where she was at. Well, meanwhile, she was missing out on these last moments with her daughter. Mm-hmm. Her daughter ended up passing away, but thankfully she had realized in that hospital and this pivotal moment of I have to be here with my daughter, not on my phone, getting angry and bitter about my life, but live my own life and spend these last moments I have with my daughter. So she she went extreme. She like got rid of her Wi-Fi, like got rid of her phone and just like was truly present. But like when you spend time with her, you're just like, oh my gosh, you're so here. Like you see me, you hear me, you like love me, you want to be with me.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of our culture is just lacking that like presence of like enjoying each other. So we just start by encouraging everyone to like, hey, like we need to slow down and have some time to grow and reframe our life and choose our path and be willing to try new things and, you know, discover new passions. And yeah, it's been really wonderful to dive in with people.
Yeah, and just show them how it's possible for them. It's not something that's...
And it's not about, like, becoming, like, Bethany.
Right,
it's being, like, their best self.
That's
and,
right.
like, their unstoppable self and, like, maximizing the life that they have. And
right.
There's been really cool testimonies of, like, moms, like, whoa, I, like, put my phone away and I'm, like, enjoying my kids more. And we're, like, having fun together and we're doing so much more. Like, we're baking in the kitchen, going hiking. Like, we're not stressed out like we normally are. I'm in tune with my kids because I don't have the distraction in my hand all the time or, you know, the loaded email inbox that's constantly pulling at me. Like, I'm finding those boundaries. So it's just being able to, like, just be a little reminder and wake-up call for people that, like, we can set beautiful boundaries that make us able to accomplish all the more and love the life we're living.
Yeah, it's amazing too because while your example is certainly unique of what you've gone through, everyone is going to face challenges. Everyone will probably face some type of heartbreak or tragedy or thing they never saw coming, they never wanted. And what I love about your perspective and just your example, Bethany, is even what you started with where you said, you know, when I was in the hospital, I just remember being grateful to be alive.
Yeah.
Like you could choose to be bitter, you know, and I'm never going to surf again. And this is, you know, and everything about what you would assess about your situation would be true, but you chose a completely different truth. Because I tell people all the time, two things can be true. Yeah. Yes, this was a tragedy, and yes, you're so grateful to be alive. Two things can be true, and you get to choose your attitude. And I just love that idea because I think that sometimes when it comes to gratitude, people think that, or I'm sorry, comparison, people think that, well, if you compare yourself with people that are better than you, then you feel, you know, comparison is the thief of joy. If you compare yourself with people that are worse off than you, then you get prideful, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you can compare yourself with people that are having a hard time and it creates gratitude and perspective. Like, I'm so grateful to get to be alive. I'm so grateful that, you know, whatever the situation is, that you can always find something to be grateful for. And your example of that is just such an inspiration for people to go, yeah, I may be having a hard time. I may be going through a heartbreak or a tragedy, but even in this, there's something to be grateful for. Even in this, there's some place to see how God has protected me, God has provided for me, God is opening a door for me. And even just your word about being present, like that one simple thing can change how people feel grateful for the, you know, what's in front of them. You know, even if what's in front of them is hard, it's like, okay, I'm going to be where my feet, I tell people all the time, be where your feet are, wherever you are, be there. And it allows you to look up from your devices. Okay, so I know people want to know about the course Unstoppable. I love the name, by the way. I'm like, yes. Tell people where they can connect with you on social media and learn about the course and everything you're doing, because your story's amazing.
Yeah, just check me out on BethanyHamilton.com. And then on the socials, I'm just at Bethany Hamilton. And you can find me there. And I even just blog if you're not interested in the course. You can get encouragement on my blog. And I'm always trying to put things out there that shed some light.
That's so fun. Do you post any pictures of your kids on your surfboard with you?
A little
bit,
I'm
like, I need to see this. And you're like, I got the kids on there before they're walking. I need to see that.
I have a really cute video of my older son and I party waving recently.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, when we were home, and he's got the bug. So it's getting my heartstrings all stoked.
Starts early. I love it. Well, Bethany, you're amazing. And you're, like you said, you know, everything in your story, so much of it, yes, God has showed up, God has given you peace, God has provided for you, but you've made the choice to glorify Him. You've made the choice to honor Him with your impact, with your platform, with your influence, and you've made the choice to be grateful and do what you can with what you have and get back on the board. So many people are benefiting from those choices. So thanks for being here. Thanks for your story. Thanks for your example. All right, y'all, I want to spend a few minutes unpacking a scripture and give you some journal questions like we always do. This verse is one of my favorites, and it's certainly appropriate with what we've been talking about today with this whole idea of perseverance. Perseverance is not just a leadership quality. It's not my idea. It's actually in Scripture. This is Romans 5:3-4. It says, we also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not disappoint us. I love this verse. Let's unpack it here for just a second. It says, we rejoice in our sufferings, and you have them, I have them. We all will experience difficulties and obstacles. Some people will experience tragedies and heartbreak. We will go through that in this life. But what's so interesting is that it goes on to talk about, it's not just that we're rejoicing in suffering, it's because it produces perseverance. Perseverance creates character. Character creates hope. And if this verse was not here, I would tell you guys, I would not connect those dots. I would not think that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. I would not connect suffering to hope. I would not connect those dots and think how going through a difficult time would create hope in my life. In fact, usually, if I'm honest, it's the opposite. You go through a heartbreak and you're like, ooh, I don't want to experience that again. I want to protect myself against that again. I don't want to put myself out there again. I don't want to get my hopes up. We've talked about this before. I need to guard my heart. If anything, going through difficult times, going through suffering sometimes can make it really difficult to hope. And that's why I love this verse, because it not just calls us to hope and persevere and rejoice in our suffering, it commands us to. We rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, and character, hope. And hope does not disappoint us. Hope does not disappoint us. Perseverance isn't just a quality that some people are born with. It's not just a leadership trait. It's a choice. When you face obstacles, when you go through hard times, when you experience heartbreak or tragedy, when you go through those really difficult times, you have a choice of how you respond to it. Just like I was talking to Bethany about, you could get bitter, you could be unhappy, you could give up, you could have a million excuses, many of which would be valid. Or you could be grateful, you could persevere, you could find a way to make something work, you could find a way to get up and try again. And you have no idea how that one action, that one decision and choice in that moment of how you respond to your suffering can change the trajectory of your whole life. And not just your life, everybody that could be impacted and influenced and inspired by you. All because of how you chose to respond to that suffering, to that tragedy, to that setback or heartbreak. And we have a choice. Two things can be true. Yes, this was tragic. Yes, this was terrible. And I'm grateful for these things. And I'm going to try again. Both are true. Which one are you going to choose? Perseverance produces character. I want character, don't you? Character produces hope. And hope does not disappoint. That is who we're called to be. This is not optional. This is what God created us to do and who He created us to be. So I want to ask you some questions for journaling like I always do, and I want you to pause and pray over these and reflect. The first one is really simple. When you face a really hard time, when you go through a setback or a failure or a mistake, how do you normally respond to it? Like be really honest right now. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's not like we want to choose the right response. I want you to be honest with yourself. Be very self-aware and reflect. How do you normally handle that? Do you get angry and want to fight? Do you shut down and hide? Fight or flight? What are your responses to failures or tragedies or any type of suffering? Write down your answer. All right, your second question is this. What are you afraid of when it comes to trying again? What are you afraid of? Your fears might be legitimate, but I think they lose power over us when we just own them, define them, and write them down. So write down, what are you afraid of? You know, when I bombed speaking, like I've talked about before, I was afraid of that happening again. I was afraid of being embarrassed. I was afraid of failing again. I was afraid of feeling like that. What is it for you? Write it down. Write down what you're afraid of when it comes to trying again and getting back up and dusting yourself off. Write down your answer. All right, your third question is this. What small action can you take to do it scared? I tell you all the time, you don't have to wait until you're not scared to do the thing you want to do. You can do it scared. So what do you need to do? What small step do you need to take today? What brave thing, what small action can you take today to do it scared? To try again, to stand back up and dust yourself off and put yourself back out there. What small action do you need to take to do it scared? Write down your answer. All right, I would love to pray for us as we wrap up. God, thank you that you call us to persevere. You command us to persevere. You know the fruits of perseverance, even if in the moment we're scared and we want to stay stuck and we want to make excuses and we're wounded and we're hurt and we're heartbroken and we're hopeless. God, you are lifting our face up to you. You are putting your hand out for us to grab it, for us to stand up, dust ourselves off, and try again. You are asking us and inviting us to persevere. God, I pray right now for every person watching that you would reveal to them what that is for them. What area of their life do they need to persevere? What area of their life are they feeling hopeless and might not even realize it? What area of their life have they given up? Given up hope? Given up possibilities for the future? They're not even trying because it's hopeless. They're not even trying because they've been wounded or failed or had mistakes in the past. They've already drawn conclusions about what that thing is. God, I pray that you would bring it to light right now in their mind, that you would rekindle hope for them, that you would call them to persevere in that area of their life. And God, I pray that you would give them strength to do so and that you would reward their efforts and their steps of faith, that they would see the fruits of that perseverance, that they would begin to exhibit those qualities of character and they would begin to feel hope again and choose hope again. God, thank you that you are the God of hope. Our trust is not in our circumstances anyway. Our trust and our faith is in you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you all so much for joining me, and you can join me next week for another episode of The Christy Wright Show, where we are talking all about goals, and it is a good one. You don't want to miss it. And as always, for more encouragement on finding confidence in yourself and the God that created you, visit ChristyWright.com.
Mercy Me is coming to Pittsburgh. The Together Again tour with Mercy Me, Crowder, and special guest Andrew Rip, Thursday, October 5th. Bring your family and friends to the PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh for Mercy Me, Crowder, and Andrew Rip live in concert. 3 multiple award-winning artists on one stage for one night. Let your spirit soar, your heart sing, and your faith ignite. Mark your calendars for Thursday, October 5th. Get your tickets now at mercyme.org.